the tears are already fallen as we are speaking today on a very heavy topic for us, very personal, very raw, and that is when you are parenting a challenging child. So join us. We're actually going to split this into 2 parts because we just get really raw and need a little bit extra time. So join us this week and next week as we share just more details about our journey in parenting and hope to encourage you in your journey.
Well, thanks so much for joining us today on the Ferguson home. And if you haven't subscribed, we'd love for you to subscribe, and so that you will get notified when we have uploaded new videos. And today, Barry and I want to talk about something that's really close to our hearts, and that is what God has taught us about parenting a challenging child. Many of you watch these videos. You know we've got 6 children, ages 17 all the way down to 6. Our youngest just turned 6. And we want to share a little bit of our story because I think as we had our first 4 kids, maybe we had a little bit of pride in our parenting, maybe a little bit of self-righteousness and kind of our philosophy of parenting, and we knew how to do it. And God has definitely shaped us and changed us through kid number 5. So talk a little bit about what we've been through there.
Yes, so we had our first 4 pretty fast. They were all close in age, and we had a parenting philosophy, and it rocked for us for those first 4. We don't think it was the one right way to raise kids, but definitely if you asked us, we had a certain way we raised our kids and routines and rhythms, and they were still challenging because they are little sinners, but it was good, and they started growing up to be respectful and kind, and all the things you want to see as your kids grow, we saw that. So that was good. So then number 5, we took about a 5-year break and then had number 5 and 6. So 5 comes along. And so we, obviously from the first 4, we had the rhythms came back quickly, and we started the same parenting strategies that we had going prior with number 5. And it was pretty early on that we realized this ain't working for him.
That's right.
And just as the days and the years went on, it became very challenging. We have so many stories. There were moments where lots of moments where I thought, I can't do this. I'm not cut out for this. And so, yeah, it's been a challenge, and we're still learning exactly what all he is dealing with. So that's, when you don't know and you just see all these different characteristics and traits that he cannot grow into an adult with this character trait and be okay. It's going to hurt him. Socially, it's going to hurt him. Job-wise, there's so many things that we see in him as we're parenting him that we see that we know will be challenges if we don't help come alongside him. So I don't know if I'm making any sense, but do you want to explain any more of kind of what we've experienced with him?
Yeah, I think we just realized that the discipline strategies that we used with the first 4 and the teaching strategies we used were not making the same impact on child number 5, and that his anxiety level was much higher, that he had, like you're talking about, he had social issues.
But we didn't know his anxiety for a while. So for those of you out there, all we saw for years was these extreme anger outbursts, temper tantrums I have never seen in any kid before. And so, my first instinct is I am so embarrassed. And so I stopped going places. I would try to take him to the grocery store, and I was used to taking all 4 of mine. They were little, they were 5 and under, and I would load them up and take them places, and I felt confident that I could get through that shopping experience okay. I had no confidence that I could go run a 5-minute quick grocery store trip with crew without there being some major meltdown, screaming fit where I was afraid of somebody to call CPS on me, because that's how crazy it got. And so, yeah, it was paralyzing sometimes, paralyzing fear. I got to where I couldn't do play dates. And for those of you with kids, you know how important for a mom those play dates are, just for the social, just so that you get time with the moms to connect. And I had to stop. Whereas I was used to doing 3 or 4 play dates a week with my older 4 when they were young, I couldn't go anywhere because I ended up being the mom who was constantly having to say, sorry, I'm so sorry he did that. And I would have to separate them and pull crew aside. And it got so just weary on my soul that I just stopped and stayed home. So major shifts in our family life and parenting were happening quickly. And
Yeah, and there's so much to this story. We're giving you kind of the 5-minute version of it, but partly because we want you to know we see you and we know what you're going through. If you're in a parenting situation with a child that just doesn't make sense to you and the behavior doesn't make sense, and you're really struggling to go out with that child or struggling with that child in school, I mean, just know that we have been there and we understand what that feels like. And I think because we have 6 kids, we have enough kids now to understand that every child is different, and you kind of go into this parenting thing and you have a little bit of overconfidence, right? Like, I read the book, I saw the video, I did the class, I did the training, and I'm going to do da 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 da, and I'm going to put my child in that equation and they're going to turn out this way. And God has just used our children to humble us and to remind us that they are all so different. And so Barry and I were just talking about that in our own journey and what we've been through, and we just felt like there's got to be those of you who are watching this video who are in the middle of that, and you're walking through that, and just what would we want to share with you from what we've learned. And it's raw for us. I mean, it doesn't take a lot of this conversation for us to start crying or shed tears or just get very emotional about it, because this child that we're talking about, he's 8 now, and he's made a lot of progress and is doing a lot better. But this has been 8 really difficult years of parenting in a way that is very unique with him from our other kids. So anyway, that's a little bit of the backstory, a little bit of our biography. But we just wrote down a few thoughts, a few scriptures of things that we wanted to share with you that we thought maybe would be encouraging to you.
Yeah. The first one, we just want to speak over your heart and to remind you that God is using you. There was no mistake when he chose you to be the parent to that challenging child.
Come on.
And sometimes, because I was there saying, God, I cannot do this. I think something got messed up here. I don't have the energy or the ability. And I know that some of you are at that spot, and we just want to speak over you.
Yeah.
God is using you. And, they probably can't articulate it. Crew is just now getting to where he can articulate helpful things. Like, Keith and I haven't taken a vacation together. That was a real big part of our life, married life. Even when we had kids, is we would get away at least once a year for just the 2 of us. And we haven't been able to do that in years because we can't leave him with anyone because it's so traumatizing to the adults there. But he can articulate now. Like, he can say, we can talk to him about, is it okay if we go away even for an overnight deal? And for him to be able to say, oh yeah, I'll be fine. Or actually, I think I need you to stay close. So that's been really helpful.
For sure. Yeah. He can now talk about what he's afraid of or what he's anxious about or what is going through his mind that he couldn't talk about when he was 3, 4, 5 years old and he couldn't articulate.
Yeah. But I go back to, that was an example of how they can't articulate oftentimes when they're young, and so you don't know that God's using you.
That's
but
right.
Now that he's a little bit older, he's able to let us know how we help him by just being there. So your steadiness, we see in his eyes after he would have like a big anger outburst, we saw that just despair, that he didn't want to do that. And even he didn't understand. So to see us, and we failed at this a lot of times, but hopefully more often than not, us pursuing his heart after one of those episodes when we were crying with him and we were so exhausted, but yet still choosing to love him, it made an impact in his life. And so, I pray for each of you that you will know, in the next year or two, even if, with wherever your kid is age-wise, that you'll realize how much God's using you in this moment. So just keep being faithful.
Yeah, I mean, and God says in Deuteronomy 6 that so much of our role as parents is the day-to-day stuff. You know, he talks about repeating God's word to your children. Talk about them when you sit in the house, when you walk on the road, when you lie down, when you get up. Like, all this is just the day-to-day stuff of life, you know. And so I read that passage just to remind you that God uses you as a parent in the life of your child, and just those day-to-day faithful things that you do, like Barry's saying, of just being there, loving your child, speaking God's word over your child, encouraging them, forgiving them, just those day-to-day things that you do as a parent. God's using those things. So you may not see the fruit of that in the short term. I think it's the hardest part about parenting, is like these are long-term investments that we're making in the lives of our kids. So we can get a little discouraged. So don't get discouraged. Don't give up. God's using you.